Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be doing a tag video which no one tagged me in, but I saw Christine at Poem Bananas Books do it the other day and I thought, oh, that sounds like a really interesting tag, so I thought I would do it. So the tag is the first dates tag, which I thought I would do because I like reading and I'm constantly on dating apps because one, I'm bored, and two, I would like to date someone at some point. So the first question in the tag is the awkward first date. A book where something fell off. It wasn't a bad book, but it lacked that spark for you. So the one I chose for that is Circe by Madeline Miller. I previously loved The Song of Achilles. It was like one of my favourite books when I was actually not reading. So like someone recommended it to me, I read it and I absolutely fell in love with it, which took a lot for me during that time. But I got Circe in January from Bloomsbury, which I was not expecting, and it came in some really nice wrapping paper and I was really excited for it, but something just didn't hit the mark for me. Like, I really enjoyed the book. Like, I thought it was like the writing style's really good. It's like got a lot of like feminist undertones. It deals with some interesting stuff in Greek mythology that's not like kind of talked about, but just something wasn't there. Like, I gave it 4 stars because the writing style is just like, I can tell it's a well written book when I was reading it, but I was just like, there was just something that wasn't like, I wanted a little bit more from it for me, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it was just a bit like, I still liked it, but So number 2 is The Cheap First Date, a book that turned out less than you expected. Now, I could have gone for any of my DNFs for this, but I thought I would go with one that I actually read and like read the whole way through and was something that I was kind of excited for, and that's Winter by Marissa Meyer. In my review for this, I spoke a lot about why it wasn't quite all there for me, and most of that is because it's ridiculously long. Like, you could have cut out half of this book and had the same thing happen, and I think it would have been miles better, because like there's just so much like stuff that's either like nothing's happening or it's taking too long to get through something, and I wanted less from this book, which sounds funny because normally you say you want more from a book, but I wanted less from this and it would have been miles better. So the next one is A Well Prepared First Date, which is a book that was better than expected. For this one I could have gone for any of the books that I've picked up on a whim and they've turned out great, or books that people said weren't as great and then I really enjoyed them, but I went with Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo because whilst this book is consistently raved about all over the book sphere, it's one of those ones where it's like you think the hype is too great, surely it can't be that good of a book, but I loved it. So I was like, I expected it to be good, but I didn't expect it to be as good as I like as good as I experienced, because it's like you think just because all these people are raving about it doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy it that much, but I adored it and I love the series. I really want to reread it sometime soon, but I also don't, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can like deal with going through it again, because it's like really like your emotions are so high. Next we have Hot But Dumb, a book that was pretty on the outside but not so hot on the inside, which is a bit not a great title for a number on the tag, but we'll go with it. So the book I chose for this was Georgia Peaches. I can't remember who wrote it, J. Robin Brown, something like that. I picked this book up from the library on Overdrive. It's one I had my eye on for a long time because apparently it has like lesbian rep, stuff like that, and I picked it up and it looked like, I love the cover of it, it's got like peaches and stuff, but it has an autistic character in it and I felt like the representation of him was so ableist. Like, the writer and the character treat him like a child, and I really felt so uncomfortable reading it that I just had to put it down and DNF it, because it was just like, this isn't okay. Maybe someone else could read it and think fair enough, but I just didn't. It just made me feel so uncomfortable. Next we have Blind Date, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's a book you picked up not knowing anything about it. So For this one, I have gone with Lips Touch by Laini Taylor. I got this book at a random coffee shop on my drive down from Skye to Glasgow. I picked it up because Laini Taylor is like huge in the YA sphere, and I didn't really know anything about this. I still don't know anything about it, so all I know is it's a short story collection and there's 3 short stories in it. I'd quite like short stories because a lot of the time they'll pack a punch in a short space of time. So yeah, Laini Taylor herself is one of those people that you don't want to know too much about before you go into a book because you want to be surprised. Because like, I've got A Daughter of Smoke and Bone and I still don't really know what it's about, and I don't really want to know what it's about until I read it, because I didn't know anything about Strange the Dreamer when I went into that, and I think that really helped that I didn't know much about it apart from like the kind of vague plot line that people say on YouTube when they're saying, I bought this book, you know? Next we have Speed Dating, which is a book that you read super fast. For this one I went with Autobiography by Christina Loren. It's really hard to say that without saying autobiography. But I'd picked this up from library on Overdrive because so many people have been saying really good things about it, so I picked it up, started it, and like spent the whole night reading it because it was just so good. I kept trying to put it down and I could not, because I was just like, I need to read it again, and like picking up my iPad like, okay, I'm gonna read one more chapter, then I put it down, then I'd be like, nope, need to go back to it. So I read it in the space of probably about 4 hours, which is pretty fast. I mean, I'm a fast reader anyway, but like I just couldn't put it down because it's just like A+. So for number 7 we have The Rebound, which is a book that you read too soon after book hangover, and it kind of ruined it for you. For this one I wasn't sure what to go for because I don't really go through book hangovers in a way. Like, I'll be thinking about a book, but it doesn't like really affect me to the point where I can't read anything else, if you know what I mean. But the one I thought of was the first book in the Kane Chronicles series by Rick Riordan, and I think I read this too soon after I finished Percy Jackson, because I finished Percy Jackson in October. I read this at the beginning of January, and it just didn't feel quite right for me, and I think that's because it was too soon after I like finally got through all the Percy Jackson novels and was like really happy to get through that, and I just like reading different characters from Rick Riordan, it just felt a bit off, and I think that's because I read it too soon. But I don't know, maybe it just, the series isn't for me. No, I do want to read the rest of the series though, because I love Egyptian mythology and I like Rick Riordan's writing. It might warm up for me in the second book. Then we have Overly Enthusiastic Date, which is a date that's trying too hard. For this one I and ahed about. The first one that popped into my head was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which is kind of a controversial thing for me, because when I read it I absolutely adored it and I gave it 5 stars. But now thinking back on it, I think if I read it now I wouldn't like it. I would probably give it a 2 or 3, because there's just like so many things I've learned since reading that I'm like, nah, I feel like I would hate it, because there's like some transphobic comments, some fatphobic comments, just it's a bit sexist as well, and at the time reading it I didn't pick up on it, but I think if I read it now I would not like it. And it's so like, oh yeah, the 80s, woo, I love the 80s, and just like trying too hard to put too much like fan service towards the 80s into it. And I've heard such bad things about the movie as well. And there was another book I thought about for this one, which was Lily Collins' autobiography. I can't remember what it's called. Unfiltered, I think it's called. But I read this like a month ago, and whilst I like it and I liked reading what she had to say, it felt like she was trying too hard to be like inspirational. Like, there's chapters where she like spoke about her eating disorder and stuff like that felt really real and like relatable and stuff like that, but then there was other chapters where it was just like she was saying stuff that was just like she felt she had to say it, and was just like, what can I say here that can make this sound like it'll be quoted? If you know what, it felt a bit off sometimes. Then we have The Perfect First Date, which is a book that got it right for you in every way. So for this one, I went with 2 books. And if you know me from my blog or Twitter or anywhere, real life, you can probably guess what these are. And the first one is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I mean, look at all these tabs. It's my favourite contemporary read. It's my favourite read that I've read since I started reading again. It's just like, I just adore it. I've read it 3 times in like the past year and a half, which is a lot for me because I barely ever reread books. But I just like, it just hit me right here. And I'm really excited for Leah to come out in a couple weeks because I get to read more about these characters. It's like, everyone's pure buzzing because, oh, I get to read more from Simon. And I'm like, I get to read more from Leah. Like, I adored Leah in this book. I'm really excited to read from her perspective as someone who's bi and hasn't come out yet. And yeah, of course I'm excited to read more from Simon and more about Blue. But I'm also really excited to read about Abby, about Nick. Just everything in this universe I adore. And then the second book I went with for this, which is no surprise to anyone, and that's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This is my 20th anniversary edition, which I love. I haven't read from this book yet because I haven't reread the books. I constantly re-listen to the audiobooks when I go to sleep though, because it's good like sleep audiobook kind of thing. What can I say about Harry Potter? Like, yeah, I went with Philosopher's Stone because it's the first book, but the whole series just kind of gets it for me. Like, I know a lot of people read it now and they're not as fussed on it like as like the first time they're reading it, and I can understand that, but going through reading this when they were coming out as a child and going through like life as Harry was going through his life, I think really just like, I wish I could do that all over again because it was just so magical at the time. Like, the feeling of, oh my god, a Harry Potter book's coming out tomorrow, and oh my god, there's a new film tomorrow. I don't think I'll ever go through that again. And whilst J.K. Rowling said some really awful stuff recently and got it so wrong, this still has such a special place in my heart. And like, my dad used to read these books to me when I was growing up, and I just loved reading Harry Potter. And I wish I could, like, yeah, like I said, I wish I could do it all over again. And then the final one is A Humiliating First Date, which is a book you're embarrassed to admit you liked. I could have gone for a couple ones with this one, although I'm honestly like, I don't really get embarrassed by it because it's like, if you like a book, you like a book. It's like when people say like, oh, they're my guilty pleasure music. It's like, I like listening to it. I don't really feel guilty for listening to things. I could have gone with Twilight because when I read it, I absolutely adored it. But I was 14 and everyone who read Twilight at that age loved it. So it's like, it's not really embarrassing, is it? So the one I went for, I don't know if I really liked it. More in the sense of, I found it hilarious. And like, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, and that's 50 Shades, like the first book. I read the second book and got bored halfway through and put it down. When you talk about 50 Shades, you think, oh, it's super problematic, oh, there's not enough consent talk, blah blah blah. And like, it does have its problems, but the problems that I had with it were not the ones that everyone else went on about. Like, yeah, those are some, like, they're not, like, some of it's not great, but it's not to the extent of what I was expecting. And like, I found this book absolutely hilarious at times because she's just constantly talking about, oh, I bit my lip, oh, my inner goddess. Like, when I was reading it, I was in hysterics, and I watched it on the flight to Japan last summer, and everyone was asleep, and I was just sitting there cackling to myself watching the film. And I think, like, whilst that's bad because it's like you're laughing at the film, I was like, it still gave me a lot of enjoyment. I don't know. So I wouldn't say I liked it, but I like, had a good time reading it, if you know what I mean. So that's it for the First Dates book tag. I'm not going to tag anyone because I don't really, like, know anyone to tag yet, really, on YouTube. But if you want to do it and you want to say I tagged you, go ahead. So yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Goodreads, I'll leave my stuff down below. My blog where I post my reviews is kirstyreadsblog.wordpress.com. I'll link to like the original tag and Christine's tag down below as well, just in case you were interested. So yeah, that's it from me. Leave me a comment, let me know what you're reading at the moment, or if there's anything you want to recommend to me based on like what I've just like spoke about, or if you just want to have a wee chat, leave me a comment. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hey everyone! Oh no, ooh. Oh, I need to stretch my leg out.